The final game in this chapter is a game played by Magnus Carlsen versus Dreev in FIDE World Cup in Tbilisi 2017. Okay, let's see the diagram position. We would have here a number of interesting middle game decisions, some related what to trade, what to keep, but also what to do with your pawn structure in this kind of situation. Black is to move, and okay, white has a bit better pawn structure, obviously, because this a7 pawn can be weakness, while white's pawn structure is intact, right? On the other hand, this bishop on a4 is controlling some squares, but is obviously controlling a lot of squares, but on the other hand is also a bit stranded piece. Question is how to play this position with black. The best for black was to actually make some useful move, maybe like rook c8, or even maybe move like a6, because there is not actually much going on in the position at the moment. Black decided that the time has come to force matters in the center, and he played move d5, which is a wrong decision. We would find out why, because Magnus will now force favorable French-like pawn structure. He played move e5, knight h7, and now what to trade, what to keep. He takes the right decision. He gives this bishop for this knight in order to block the center and try to limit this bishop on b7. So bishop d7, good move. Rook takes d7, d4, closing up the center. C takes d4. Knight e2, he would love to push this knight to d4. d3, how to take? Of course with queen. Because if pawn takes, then d4 and black has a great game. So queen takes. And now Dreev does very good decision. Because in the case that he does some move, whatever move, let's say a5, after knight e4, white will be having, well, strategically more or less, I would not say one game, not a one game, but a large advantage, because this knight will be fantastic, this bishop will be stupid piece for the rest of the game, black will have zero counterplay, and white will simply have kingside attack. So Dreev here understands that the last moment for his counterplay is here actually by sacrificing a pawn. So remember this, here he plays a strong move, d4, giving a pawn away in order to open his bishop and in order to open counterplay along the file. So d4, very good move. So in this strategic situation, do not hang to a pawn, because here, for example, if you make some random move and knight d4, there will be no chance for counterplay anymore. So Dreev senses it. Either he has to give a pawn and get a counterplay, or will be nothing. So he pushes d4, strong practical decision. Knight d4. And now another good move. g5. You cannot, by the way, take, because unfortunately rook is hanging. So no time to take a knight. If white can here manage to, let's say, push h4, let's suppose that you make again some random move, white would have large advantage, because this knight is very stupid and there is not even close to enough compensation for a pawn. Okay, rook d8 is possible to include, but then after c3, black again needs to do more or less like in the game. So black here made another good move. He played move g5. What does he want to do? This knight, which is standing very bad on h7, he wants to improve to g6 and to target white's pawn on e5. So g5. c3, Magnus accused this knight. Knight f8. Now knight will come to g6. If white is not careful, black would get great counterplay. with a pair of bishops and white potentially weak pawns. So Carlsen plays move knight h2. Strong move. He wants to clean passage for his queen to g3 and then to be able to attack, to try to attack black's king. Knight can potentially maybe even go to g4. So knight h2, knight g6, queen g3. Now black probably made a mistake. Black here should have made a constructive move. One is maybe rook c8, the other one is rook d5, to try to keep the tension. Black played move knight h4, willing to get a quick counterplay. Black's logic was, okay, he wants to take a pawn. And if white plays f3, then another diagonal will open. Maybe black will jump and get a very strong counterplay. If white doesn't play f3, how will he protect his pawn? Black probably thought that if white plays move knight f3, that this is wrong because black will take, and have a great counter. Rook d3, he wants to damage a pawn structure. If bishop moves, well, not immediately, but if bishop moves, actually pawn will later hang. This is kind of something to worry about. So it looks like that with move knight h4 that black has taken a great decision. But actually it is wrong. Why? Because black's king is weak. And this weakness will actually prove important. So Magnus here plays important, very strong decision, knight f3. He trades this knight because he understands that this knight A is attacking knight, and secondly is preventing pawn push. So knight f3, knight f3, knight f3, rook d3, and actually it turns out that black king is very weak and that black doesn't have counterplay. h4, opening the route to black king. G takes h4, queen h4, bishop f3, g f3. Very precise calculation by white. Rook takes f3. If not rook f3, well, the other logical move was maybe move queen b7 to try to take by queen. But then let's say king to h2. I would like to play move rook g1. So king h7. Let's say bishop f4. Rook g8. Rook g1. Rook f3. And now let's say rook a d1. We have equal number of pawns, but black's king is extremely weak. I have a threat. Well, the threat is a mating threat. Rook takes g7, queen h6 check, and rook d8 mate. So queen b8, rook d6, and let's say a5. Black's problem is that he is here in a sort of a zugzwang. Let's say move b3 is possible and to push c pawn. But also c4 pawn is also possible immediately. Let's say queen c7 to protect from mate. b3. Let's say immediate c5 is not so great because after takes, queen takes c5, black will get very good drawing chances. So b3. And after, let's say, rook takes b3. Rook g7. Because now my bishop is not hanging. Rook g7, bishop h6. Rook g6, and now it's mating attack. Bishop g5, rook g8, bishop f6. Rook f6, queen f6, threatening mate. Rook b8, rook d3 wins. And if you do not take, if queen goes away, okay, then pawn runs. So he's just in a stalemate. In the game, Dreev took rook f3, bishop h6, f5, you cannot take because queen g4 and rook is hanging. So f5, bishop g7, king g7. White is the first to attack. King h1. Black resigned here because rook is coming to g1. And move like queen b7 does not help because after rook g1 check, rook g3, king h2, rook g4, takes. I don't even need to take by queen, I can just give rook g1 and rook g4. I like somehow this game because it did show some complex decisions. First here d5 was not a good decision, which Magnus does punish it, because in this position he gave his bishop for a knight and blocked the center. Dreev found in this position the only way to get to counterplay, and this is to sacrifice his pawn in order to open up his bishop. And then here, knight h4 was played too early, and Magnus correctly judged that by trading the knights, after knight f3, rook d3, that there is no counterplay, because king is weak after h4. I like this game because it did, in a way it is simple, but also it did show, well, the decision-making process. And this is the last game in this chapter, what to trade, what to keep. It is very complex subject, difficult to feel, difficult to learn, because even the greatest players, you have seen it, sometimes make mistakes. And this is always somehow something which is not easy in the game. But to trade pieces, to take these decisions to your advantage, contrary to this, to your disadvantage, because other people, they make trades, and every trade kind of worsens their position. So this is complex subject. But I do hope somehow that those examples which I did show will help you understand the subject better.